Yes, sir.
Hi, Congressman. My name's Terry McMahon. I'm a second-year law student. And speaking of presidents, you served with 4 presidents, and I was actually curious as to what you thought about them personally, whether you actually liked them, didn't like them regardless of political views, and actually also who was the best at reaching out to Congress.
Good question. Well, of those 4, I'll limit it to those 4, because I really have started, I've known every president a little bit or much since, heaven, this really ages me, since Eisenhower, since I became a page in 1958 in Dwight Eisenhower's administration. But, so that's 9 presidents that I've known. But of these 4 that I've served under in Congress, who was the best at reaching out to Congress? It would be, I would say, Clinton probably, or George Bush, one. Generally, the party that's in the minority in Congress or out of power, is opposite from the president, finds that they have a better relationship than they do with their own president. George Bush will make more compromises with the Democrats than he would ever make with the Republican leaders in the House. He will make more compromises, and he drove us crazy with his unwillingness to make any kind of compromises with us on things. So he will make those compromises now. So the Democrats will probably get along with him pretty well. We'll be gnashing our teeth. Republicans will be. So Clinton was easy to deal with. Clinton's also he's very facile. He's very easy to get along with. He reaches out. Bush, by the way, does a better job of that well, I guess it's mainly because I've been in the leadership as chairman of the Foreign Operations, but I've been at the White House more often under Bush than I have this Bush, George W. Bush, than I have under any other president there. So just to rattle it off, I would say Reagan was the chairman of the board. He didn't meet with members of Congress all that much, but he had a vision. He had a good idea of where he wanted to go, and he picked the people and delegated, and they moved in that direction. The first Bush was the consummate kind of insider bureaucracy. He had served in every position in government, and he knew everything backwards and forwards. But he just didn't really understand the politics of the things that he was doing sometimes. I mean, the deals that he made on the budget were so fatal, of course, for him. Clinton, policy wonk, loves policy, knows details. I remember flying on Air Force One to Arizona with him. We were going to do a social, here's one single thing that he ever did on Social Security. He did it in my district there. And we were flying to Arizona with him, and he got into the Social Security. And I'd been spending 5 years working on this thing at that point. And I mean, God, this guy knew the details of all the charts. He could tell you every chart graph of where everything was going to go, what it was going to happen in 30 years, 25 years, how all this stuff was going to, what the unfunded liabilities would be, what if you changed a 0.5% here, what a kind of an impact. He knew all that stuff. It was really an impressive array of details. But he also sometimes lost the big picture as a result of that, I think. And in the area, for example, of terrorism, I don't think he really ever grasped what we were facing in terrorism before 2000, before the end of his term. This Bush obviously came to office. His first defining thing was rising to the occasion on the events of September 11th, met those well, but I think has faltered since that time. This president gets a bad rap when people say that he's not smart or he's not well read. He actually, I think, probably reads more than any of the others. Every time I see him, he says, "Oh, have you read this book?" And he's got some biography that he's just been reading. He wants me to read it or something like that. Gingrich used to do that all the time. He'd always hand off things that he was reading to you. Bush reads a lot. He and Laura read the First Lady read every night. And he also watches movies that are really interesting movies, the things you would never think that he would watch. I remember one time he said to me, we were in the helicopter, and he said, we got talking about books and movies, and he said, "Oh, have you seen the movie Paperclip?" And I said, "Paperclip? I haven't even heard of it." I went online, sure enough, it was actually playing in one little art theater in my district there at the time, but I never did get to see it. But it's about diversity and tolerance. This was George Bush who was telling me about this. It was about diversity and tolerance, and he said it's a great movie. It's a documentary about a middle school that tries to collect one paperclip for every person in the world that's been affected, that has HIV/AIDS, and how they go about doing that there, and the lessons they learn from all that. Rather extraordinary, I thought, that this president mentioned that thing to me there. So I think this president gets a bit of a bum rap, but I give him a rap on the knuckles for a lot of other things there.
Good insights. That's a good story. I hadn't heard that paperclip story. Let me insert another issue here, which is Homeland Security, which Congress has created this new department with a gun to its head, which is often how legislation finally gets passed. How well do you think Congress did in creating this new agency that was meant to deal with the post 9/11 terrorism threat? And has the department made Americans safer?
The answer to the second one is no. That's a short and easy answer on that one. The answer on the first one is I think we did a terrible job with it. But I think we all knew it was going to be a terrible job, and we were responding to what was the need of the moment. Everybody realized that after 2011, after September 11th, that we had had just a catastrophic failure of intelligence, that the side doing international intelligence, the CIA, wasn't talking to the side that does internal intelligence, the FBI. There was no meeting, there was no sharing of the data. And we have something like 38 different agencies doing intelligence work. I mean, it's such a mishmash. And we tried to pull all that together, but not completely, because we didn't pull FBI under Homeland Security. We left that over there in Justice Department because that was just too big a bite to take. So it was a mix. It was, and I think I remember at the time saying this is going to be a disaster in terms of implementing it. And it's been true. It's getting better as you go by, but my God, you'd hope at the end of 4.5 years that it would be getting better. But it's only now beginning to get a little better as the integration really takes place. It's a huge cultural change. It's a huge cultural thing. Let me just give you one example of that. As much as 2 years, at least 2 years after the Homeland Security went into effect, the Border Patrol and the Customs, Immigration and Customs were brought together, of course, under this. They had been two separate agencies, one in Treasury, one in Justice. Here, they were brought together under Homeland Security. And while they have this similar kind of a mission in terms of security along the border, against illegal immigrants or against illegal goods coming into the country, they have very different cultures. And so in Arizona, the policy was for immigration that they could not do hot pursuit because they were chasing perhaps children in a van up the highway, and so they couldn't, and they may crash and they get killed, so they couldn't do hot pursuit. Customs, on the other hand, was supposed to be going after drug dealers. So they were chasing after all of these people. When they put them together and put the same uniform and they got in a car and they went chasing, if they started to do that, they had to stop and let the immigration person out of the car in order for the customs guy to go on with the chase there, because the immigration guy couldn't be in, because they hadn't changed the policy to make it one consistent policy. I mean, there's the kind of nuttiness that you get when you try to pull those kinds of agencies together there.
Do you think that there's any hope that Congress, with its oversight responsibilities, which some say have not been exercised as aggressively as they should have been, but do you think that Congress will ultimately be able, through its committees and so forth, to put this agency on track?
They've definitely not exercised the oversight responsibility that we should have. It's been a huge failure on the part of Congress. It's my biggest regret of my 22 years there is our failure to do the oversight that we should do. Whether they'll be able to pull it together, I would be very doubtful that Congress can pull it together. Can you find a president that can pull this thing together and make some more changes? As I said, it's gradually getting better, but you still have a functionally an agency that is not functioning the way it should function, and structurally can't function right.
So you say we're not safer today. Are we less safe?
No, I don't know that. No, we're not less safe. In some ways, we are safer. We do have better intelligence. We are doing things at the airports that we didn't do before, but we're clearly not doing much on trains and bus and on shipping and stuff. We aren't able to check cargoes. We're not using the technology that's available to us today to do that kind of checking. So we may be a bit safer than we are, but the threats are greater out there than they were before. So if you measure them against one another, I don't know that we're any safer than we were.
Okay, another student? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Congressman. My name is Amanda Iki. I'm studying international relations and economics here at NYU. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience orchestrating NAFTA with the Clinton administration and reflect a bit.
Orchestrating NAFTA?
NAFTA, that's right. And reflect a little bit on how it's been implemented now. I know it's been criticized, specifically Chapter 11, sort of how that trade regime is operating, now almost a decade after it was negotiated.
Well, I guess I'm probably not the best person to ask this of because I was a supporter of NAFTA. I still remain a supporter of NAFTA. I don't think I'm being defensive about it. I think NAFTA is working. I don't think there's any question. If you look at the total amount of trade between the three countries, I mean, it's more than doubled in the 10 years during that time. We've had tremendous increases in trade. Mexico's economy has improved. The number of jobs we created in all three countries has been tremendous. I don't know where you say, how people look at it and say that NAFTA is a failure, that it really hasn't worked. Has it solved all the problems? Of course it hasn't solved all the problems. It never was going to solve all the problems. It never was intended. And in that sense, we may have been guilty of overselling it, as though somehow that it was going to be nirvana when we had a free trade agreement between the three countries. We perhaps oversold it. It never was going to solve all the problems. If there has been a failure, the failure has been on the part of Mexico to undertake the really fundamental reforms it needs to undertake to make it work properly in Mexico. They've done some of the reforms, and in some areas they've been very good. But they have not, for example, reformed their energy sector. They still don't allow investment from outside, and it's killing them. It's killing them. This is a country that now imports natural gas, for heaven's sakes, because they can't produce enough of it themselves. They have not at all reformed the education system, and that's their real Achilles heel. If they don't get more people in secondary school getting the kinds of skills they need, they're never going to get to the level that a South Korea or a Taiwan, for example, are at. And the third area, they didn't really make the reforms in agriculture. We said that we would make the agricultural section of the NAFTA agreement the last one that went into place. So the tariff reductions in agriculture were the very last, to give them more time. It was 10 years to give them time for those, to make those reforms, but they never really did make the reforms. And so Mexico is still caught in an extraordinarily inefficient agricultural system of what they call ejidos, small 2, 3, 4, 5 hectare plots of land where you can't efficiently use capital. That is, you can't efficiently use machinery in order to grow a lot of soybeans or a lot of wheat and be competitive in a world market. Where is Mexico competitive? They're very competitive in the things that are not under the ejido system, which is their fruits and vegetables, which are all on the west coast, south of where I live, down in Sonora and Sinaloa. And you like your lettuce salad here in New York in the winter? Chances are it's coming from Mexico. At this time, starting in January to April, most of that lettuce will come from Mexico throughout the United States. So they're very successful in those areas of competing. But they have not made the changes in the basic agriculture. And so it's caused tremendous, not only divisions, but there's dispersions of people that have been driven off of the farms because they can't compete any longer against U.S. corn or against U.S. Wheat or soybeans there, and they have not made the changes they need to make.